Okay, if you had to pick a peak year in UFC history, like any year, what would you say? For me, it's probably 2016, and I'll give you a few reasons why. So obviously, the first one is the most obvious one, UFC 200, probably the biggest UFC event to date. The yellow octagon, it's supposed to be John Jones versus Cormier, but that fell through. So instead, we had Cormier and Anderson Silva, which was a really random matchup. Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt, which was also a weird matchup. But overall, the card was pretty good. Second reason was this banging game, UFC 2. Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey on the front cover. This was like a really big step up from the UFC 1 game. Overall, probably the most enjoyable UFC game for me. What do you guys think? Number 3 was obviously Conor McGregor getting his ass kicked by Nate Diaz, getting tapped. This was very unexpected, and the underdog won that fight. It upset the whole odds of MMA. Everyone thought it'd be easy for Conor McGregor. This fight made Nate Diaz a superstar he is today, and he got like 1 million followers the day after this fight, I remember. So yeah, that was a crazy fight night as well. Next up is probably the best thing to happen in the UFC during this time was CM Punk making his debut. He had 2 fights in the octagon, really showed out. But for real, this was a very odd decision. I remember when this happened, a lot of fans were a bit confused. A WWE superstar coming to UFC for no reason. He didn't really have any experience besides training with Anthony Pettis. But yeah, 2016 was madness. And of course, UFC in 2016 was definitely Conor McGregor's year. Despite losing to Diaz, he also became a double champ. If you remember, clinical performance against Eddie Alvarez. 4 rounds of domination at UFC 205. He also had a run-in with Khabib and Tyron Woodley during that fight week. The pay-per-view count for Conor McGregor that year was crazy. And to finish off, we can have a look at some of the best fights during this year. Cub Swanson, Doo Ho Choi, 3-round crazy brawl. Like I said before, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. The rematch, Robbie Lawler vs Carlos Condit, another banging fight, 5-rounder. Steve Bosch on the corner, probably one of my favourite light heavyweight fights. 15 minutes of big boy swanging and banging. Tyron Woodley, Stephen Thompson, a very close fight again, another good fight. Joanna, Claudia Gadea, which was good as well because they had a tough season. A lot of hype behind that fight. So let me know how you feel about this, because I think UFC in 2016 was peak MMA, peak UFC, peak everything. What do you guys think? What was your favourite year in the UFC and why? Maybe UFC 216, I missed the moments. Put them in the comments. I don't know. Do what you want.